Many of the archive viewers are probably saying to themselves, who is Jordan Peterson? Other viewers are likely saying, this should be very interesting. In either case, he has certainly been deemed a polarizing figure. Dr. Jordan Peterson is an author, psychologist, online educator, and professor emeritus at the University of Toronto. For 20 years, he taught some of the most highly regarded courses at Harvard and the University of Toronto and published more than 100 well-cited scientific papers with his students and co-authors. About 8 years ago, when the archive was only 2 years old, I was researching the topic of belief and when humans first started to use it. The interest in belief mechanisms was a personal one. It was likely an evolved interrogative stemming from my childhood growing up Baptist. I wanted to know the origin of belief for the stories in the Bible. In other words, when did humans start believing in something that they did not experience firsthand in their own temporal space-time? After coming across Jordan Peterson videos several times in my queries, I decided to check it out. Dr. Peterson's lectures eventually helped me conclude that the mechanisms of belief for humans as they relate to the ancient Sumerian pantheon of gods, or any pantheon of so-called mythical gods, including the Bible for that matter, are the same, regardless of them being myth or reality. It seems now is a good time to introduce archive viewers to Dr. Peterson because he has a proclivity for explaining universal truth. In this case, he is explaining human psychology as it relates to one of the oldest stories ever written by humans that we have discovered thus far.
That's Marduk. So the story of Marduk, I'll just give it to you very briefly. Tiamat and Apsu are locked in embrace at the beginning of time. Goddess of salt water, god of fresh water, together. Chaos and order, right? They give rise, masculine and feminine, they give rise to the world of the elder gods. And those are, to me, they're primordial motivational forces. They're something like that. And their rage and their lust and their love and all these things that possess us that are there forever. And they're out in the world acting. And they carelessly slay Apsu, their father. And they're making a racket, and then they kill Apsu. And then Tiamat gets wind of that. And that's Tiamat right there, by the way. She's kind of a rough-looking creature. And she's the mother of all things. And so she's not very happy about this. Her children have destroyed structure itself. Plus, they're noisy and careless, and so she thinks, all right, just like Noah, just like the God that brings the flood to Noah, exactly the same idea. Tiamat comes back and says, yeah, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to take you out. And she makes this battalion of monsters and puts the worst monster there is at the head of the battalion. His name is Enūma. He's like a precursor to the idea of Satan. And she lets the gods know, hey, I'm coming for you. And so they're not very happy about this because they're gods, but like, yeah, she's chaos itself, right? She gave birth to everything. This is no joke. And so they send one god out after another to confront her, and they all come back with their tails between their legs. There's no hope. And then one day there's a new god that emerges, and that's Marduk. And the gods know, as soon as he pops up, they know he's something new. Remember, and this is happening while the Mesopotamians are assembling themselves into one of the world's first great civilizations. So all the gods of all those tribes are coming together to organize themselves into a hierarchy to figure out what proposition rules everything. And so Marduk is elected by all the gods, and he says, look, I'll go out there and I'll take on Tiamat, but here's the rule. From here on, you follow me. I determine destiny. I'm the top god. I'm the thing at the top of the hierarchy. And all the other gods say, hey, look, no problem. You get rid of chaos, we do exactly what you say. Now Marduk, he has eyes all the way around his head, and he speaks magic words. Those are his primary attributes. And so he takes a net, and he goes out to confront Tiamat. And he encloses her in a net, which I think is so cool because it's an encapsulation, right? It's a conceptual encapsulation. He encloses chaos itself in a conceptual structure. He puts it in a net, and then he cuts her into pieces, and he makes the world. And then he creates human beings to inhabit that world and to serve the gods. And he creates human beings out of the blood of Enūma, the worst of the demons. And that took me, it was a Colin DeYoung, who was a student of mine, helped me figure that out. I thought, geez, that's pretty damn pessimistic. It's like, you know, what exactly It's like a fall metaphor. It's like the idea of original sin, but our joint conclusion with regards to that was that human beings are the only creatures in creation that can truly deceive. Right? We have the capacity for evil, just like it says in the Adam and Eve story. We can actually do that, and that's why we're made out of the blood of Kingu, the king of the demons. We are the thing that can deceive, that can twist the structure of reality. Well, so Marduk. Now, the Mesopotamians had an emperor, right? And the emperor was the avatar of Marduk. That's what made him emperor. He was only an emperor if he was going to be Marduk. He had to be a good Marduk, which meant he had to confront Tiamat, chaos, and cut her up and make order out of her pieces. And what the Mesopotamians used to do at the New Year's celebration, they'd go outside their walled city, and that's explored territory versus unexplored territory. They'd go outside their walled city into chaos, and they'd bring all the statues that represented the gods, and they'd act this out. Because they're trying to figure something out, right? They're trying to figure out what this means. They're acting it out. And then they'd take their emperor, and the priest would make him kneel, and they'd take all his king uniform off, his emperor uniform off, and make him kneel and humiliate him and nail him with a glove and say, okay, how were you not a good Marduk this year, right? And then he'd recount all the ways that he was inadequate in confronting chaos, and then they'd do the celebration, and Marduk would win, and the king would go sleep with a royal prostitute. The reason for that was, it's the same idea as St. George pulling the virgin from the dragon. It's exactly the same idea, that if you encounter the reptilian chaos, you can extract something out of it with which, if you unite, you produce creative order. That's what they were acting out. And that was the basis for the Mesopotamian idea of sovereignty. It's so smart. It's so unbelievably smart. And you know, the Mesopotamians had a massive influence on the civilizations that then had a massive influence on us. It's one of the stories of how the notion of sovereignty itself came to be. It's the evolution of the idea of God. That's one way of thinking about it, but even more importantly, it's the evolution of the idea of the redemptive human being, right? And that's taken to one of its conclusions, well, in the story of Buddha, but also in the story of Christ, the idea of the perfect individual. And the notion is, well, that's the word that speaks truth into chaos at the beginning of time to generate habitable order that is good. That's the story. And so with that, let's see. I'll just show you these pictures because they're so interesting. Once you know what they mean, they're so cool. That's a symbol of infinity. Well, that's Hercules and the Hydra. Well, what's life like? You cut off one head. What happens? 7 more grow, right? Well, what do you do? Run home? Well, no, that's not what you do. This is what you do. You fight it. It's the chaos that generates partial chaos. It's the ultimate chaos that generates partial chaos. But that chaos also is what revivifies life, because otherwise it would just be static.
So here we have a social scientist delving into the truths of our collective ancient human past. As a footnote, the viewer should be aware that the relief to which Dr. Peterson refers also has a different interpretation. This is a black and white crop of the full engraving plate scan from plate 5 of the work, quote, a second series of the monuments of Nineveh, including bas reliefs from the palace of Sennacherib and bronzes from the ruins of Nimrod, from drawings made on the spot during a second expedition to Assyria, end quote. There are at least 2 interpretations of what the image is or was intended to represent. Some sources interpret the image as Bel Merodach or Marduk, with a thunderbolt fighting Tiamat. This interpretation is the one Dr. Peterson chose to explain. Other modern sources assert that the engraving is probably Anzu and Ninurta. Quote, Ninurta or Adad pursues a leonine bird monster, perhaps the Anzu or Azaku, end quote. The original gypsum wall carving from which the drawing was taken is now displayed in room 6 of the British Museum. The story behind this second interpretation of the engraving is as follows. Anzu stole the Tablets of Destinies and therefore the Enlil ship from Enlil while he was taking a daily swim. At the entrance of the sanctuary which he had been viewing, Zu awaits the start of the day, as Enlil was washing with pure water, his crown having been removed and deposited on the throne. Zu seized the tablets of destiny in his hands, took away the Enlil ship. Suspended were the divine formulas. Stillness spread all over, silence prevailed. The sanctuary's brilliance was taken off. Enlil was speechless. Ninurta's mother, Ninhursag, went ballistic. She would not stand for her son's rights as Enlil's heir to be stolen by Anzu. Launch thy offensive, capture the fugitive Zu. Let thy terrifying offensive rage against him. Slit his throat, vanquish Zu. Let thy 7 ill winds go against him. Cause the entire whirlwind to attack him. Let thy radiance go against him. Let the winds carry his wings to a secret place. Let sovereignty return to Eker. Let the divine formulas return to the Father who begot thee. With Enki's help, Ninurta was able to shoot Anzu's wings and bring him down, returning the Enlil ship back to Enlil. It is noteworthy that the second interpretation falls directly in line with Zecharia Sitchin's translations. But even though the two interpretations have different central protagonists, the concept of descending into chaos as a means to create order is still applicable. Again, this is why the archive believes it is worthwhile to check out Dr. Peterson. As we stated earlier, he has a certain proclivity in arriving at universal truth. Hey, remember that tagline at the end of every archive video? All great truths begin as blasphemies. Well, in modern times, we believe that tagline applies to Dr. Peterson directly. Some of you may be familiar with Giordano Bruno. If not, here's what you need to know. He was a philosopher, astronomer, mathematician, and occultist whose theories anticipated modern science. Bruno is perhaps most known for the tragic death he suffered at a burning stake because of the tenacity with which he maintained his unorthodox ideas at a time when both the Roman Catholic and Reformed churches were reaffirming a geocentric model with the Earth at the center of the universe. Dr. Peterson reminds me a lot of Bruno. And while in modern society we no longer burn unorthodox people at the stake, there is indeed an equivalent. While the archive was putting together this short video, we found that Dr. Peterson was recently in the news again. Take a look at this news clip and see why the archive's tagline came to mind as we watched What Is Going On.
An Ontario court ruling that Jordan Peterson can be forced to attend social media training demanded by the Ontario College of Psychologists over his past post criticizing gender ideology and climate change.
So if he refuses to comply, he loses his license to practice clinical psychology. But Jordan Peterson says his fight is not over.
And joining us right now from Ontario, Jordan Peterson. Jordan, they say you want to keep your license, you got to do it, but you say you're not going to do it. How's this going to end?
No, I didn't say I wouldn't do it. I did say that I don't believe that it'll help.
Okay.
I'm in their hands at the moment fundamentally because they've already sentenced me, so to speak, to an indefinite period of social media retraining with some social media expert, whatever the hell that is. And so I'm obliged to undertake that training at my own expense for an indefinite period of time until they, in their wisdom, presume that I've learned whatever it is that I'm supposed to learn, which, given my nature, strikes me as highly unlikely.
Jordan, what's the goal here? I mean, are they trying to...
The goal is to take my license.
Yeah, but are they trying to send a larger message, not to you, but your followers as well?
No, they're trying to send a larger message to me, my followers, and every professional of any sort in a regulated profession in Canada. And the message is, you do exactly what the low-level, mid-wit bureaucrats tell you, or you will lose your livelihood. That's the message, and it's crystal clear.
Dr. Peterson, I mean, does everyone who needs to continue their license have to do this, or are they just cherry picking you? And why do you say it's indefinitely? You have to continue to take these courses until they decide you've learned your lesson?
Yes, that's part and parcel of the whole deal. Yes, yes. And no, I wouldn't say they're precisely cherry picking me. I suppose in a sense they are, because I'm the most well-known voice among professionals who dissent from the whatever ideology I'm supposed to be following. I dissent from that most egregiously, let's say. And so they're definitely making an example of me. And it's quite an effective example in some ways, because I have the time and resources to fight this battle, and I'm not dependent on my license for my financial stability and the support of my family. It's an extraordinarily expensive and time-consuming battle, and it's definitely the case that the goal is to take my license, because what they'll claim after dragging me through whatever this re-education is going to be, that, you know, I can't be taught, that I'm ungovernable. That'll be the final. He is a disgrace to his profession, and he's ungovernable.
Well, when it all resolves itself, we'd love to have you back.
Is this similar to what's happening here in America? They're doing this with Republicans, Donald Trump?
Well, it's similar to, I would say, cancel culture in general, and it's similar to all the attempts to stop people who have an alternative viewpoint, which wouldn't have been alternative at all like 10 years ago, from expressing themselves by any means possible for the good of humanity and the planet.